Good afternoon and welcome everybody to our presentation and webinar on which dietary supplement certification is best for your company, SSCI or Codex GMP with 21 CFR Part 111 for dietary supplements. Both John and I do a lot of the work for preparing somebody to go in and be audited for dietary supplements. And so we get a lot of questions. A lot of the questions are common. And while we sent out a brochure that covers the main ones, there's always a really good question from everybody. So I'm excited that we have the opportunity to meet with all of you today because we'll be able to get into the deeper questions and hopefully will be of greater assistance to everybody. So with that said, let's talk about who John is and who I am. We're the John and John Show, starring John and John. John Gawlak is our technical manager. He's the head of the auditing team. He has over 35 years of 12 experience in a variety of roles that cover and span pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, skincare, food, medical device. And he's got deep experience in a lot of roles that really make him a real asset for anybody who reaches out to him. And, he's great with supplier qualification audits, surveillance audits, doing CAPA plans. When the FDA comes in and there's a letter of warning, he's great to come in, and his team can come in and really identify the root cause and set up a CAPA plan that puts people back on track and back on the good graces with the FDA if that's ever needed. Also, he knows a whole lot about supply chain and our new automation system for that, which we'll talk about shortly. Now, I'm John Armstrong. I'm the National Sales Manager for Pharmaceuticals and Dietary Supplements. I've been here 4 years. And in the industry of pharmaceuticals and medical, I have 25 years of experience. Really excited. I've had roles as head of sales of large teams, small teams, commercial operations, training, and of course as a sales rep. And my favorite role is sales rep. With that said, who's SGS? SGS has been around a long time. So in this picture here, there's probably people's great-great-grandmothers and grandfathers. They started in 1878. And so as of today, there's about 140 years of experience in business. And the result is, in terms of TIC, or testing, inspection, certification, we're number one. We're the world leader. And in terms of employees, we're just shy of 100,000. We have offices all over the world and 120 countries or more. And we're in about 10 global industries. So chances are we can cover a lot of ground. If you switch companies, please at least call SGS. What's the difference here? There's a lot of companies in this space, but what makes us different? Well, we are global. And so we act locally, but we also have global contacts in everywhere you might be doing business or where you might be doing business. We believe our quality of service matters. Industry experience, when you think in terms of who John sends out for an audit, if he doesn't go out, he and his colleague have 35 years, but the other players in his space and the audit team have on average of about 20, 25, somewhere in that ballpark. So we're sending out people who are highly experienced. And we also have the ability to help out with sustainability, e.g. and digital. I know digital has become so heavily requested that you just at least wanted to mention that to you. I'm attempting to click to the next slide. There we go. Responded. So John and I work in the business assurance portfolio. So there's other divisions too that I just mentioned. Aerospace, there's food, there's chemical, but we're in business assurance. We've also got, by the way, testing and things like that. We run clinical trials. We've got a CDMO, a CMO, etc. But in business assurance, we're focused on doing the assessments, the auditing, the certification, the training. That's what's most requested from us. So what that means is we're doing second-party audits, we're doing supplier qualification audits, we're doing surveillance audits, we're auditing, doing gap analysis, we're most likely doing a pre-audit to make sure that the company's set up for certification, they're ready for it, or we're doing the certification to an ISO, a GMP standard. And in other cases, we might be doing an at-cause audit. But we do all kinds of audit and certification for GMP and ISO. A lot of times what companies do, and we have big companies, the biggest that you know the names of, medium size, and people that are working out of a warehouse that's, it's very small, with one or two people. But what ends up happening is a lot of people, they look at that pre-audit to make sure they're ready to go through this process. And sometimes they pair it with training, depending on how big their team is. Obviously, teams are required for ongoing training. They're trying to enhance their skills and abilities. Some people want the foundation. Some people want to enhance their abilities with people who have 35 years of experience or in a lot of dietary supplement companies who can offer something that's much richer and enhance their team's capability. We can do that if that's needed, but people will come in, they'll do the training, they'll do the gap analysis, and then if everything's great, they'll go into certification. Very common. Maybe that happens in 1 in 4 companies that we deal with. John and I are probably engaged with at least 8 to 10 a month. So we've had some really good experience. Now, some people know SGS because of our food assurance, but we do food testing, we do dietary supplement testing, pharmaceutical testing. We're all over that area. Before I mentioned, we have digital. We do have medical device. We're a player in that market. And we now have something new. It's supply chain assurance. And with our new system, John tells a story on stage a lot about he recalls back when he was, running all these suppliers off of a spreadsheet. And you can do that. You can get away with that with a lot of suppliers. But there's a point in which really keeping up and making sure everybody's turned in their documents every year becomes more than you can handle. And we've got a digital solution for you. And it will help rank order where the risk is. It will help set you up for success with a dashboard that makes it very easy, a platform in which your suppliers can just upload their forms, messages go out categorically. We've got a back office team that will do the work in making sure that forms are correct. And then obviously we can assist with any supplier quality audits or surveillance audits as needed going forward. Lastly, we do ESG and consulting services as well, but it's the training I think that is really rich, and that's going to set your team up for success and moving forward. So with that said, thank you for listening to the commercial. What's on the agenda today? It's to discuss the purpose of dietary supplement certification, a little bit richer than just the obvious, educate on the difference between SSCI and Codex GMP with 21 CFR 111. What are the common non-conformances? Where should you be putting your attention prior to the audit? Clearly, we sent out a checklist, but what are the tips and tricks there that can really set you up well? How to best prepare for the dietary supplement certification? We can see, you can almost talk to people at this point and find out whether they're really set up and they have everything in place. When they don't, there's a different tone, different question set. And we do have an SGS Academy. I'll talk a little bit more about that, and we'll share our contact information in case something appealed to you today that you'd like to hear more about. We do have a brochure on this, which if you ask me, I'll be happy to send you out the brochure on certification. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, John, who I'm a fan of, and I think by the end of this presentation, you will be too. So thank you. Take it away, John.
Well, thank you, John. And I do appreciate you kicking off this webinar this afternoon. So the first thing I'd like to do to get us started here is ask a couple survey questions. So if everybody would take a second and answer this survey. It's a multiple choice question. And then in a minute, I'll click the screen forward. We'll see what the survey says. But which certifications are accepted by Amazon for dietary supplement? All right, I got one person who's clicked on the screen so far. Don't worry, there's no wrong answers. We will walk through this, and this is just to get my feet wet to make sure I know where you guys are coming from. All right, we got people rolling in with the answers now. So I got over 60% of the answers, so I'm going to click forward. So, yes, at Amazon, there's a bunch of different certifications out there that you can choose to get in order to sell your product, your dietary supplements on Amazon. The GMRA organization that works with the ANSI NSF standard. And then there's the SSCI is accepted. The WHO GMP is accepted, but not for dietary supplements. Our SGS certification, of course, the NSF ANSI, and the USP verified is now accepted as well. All right, next question for you. Which one of these are accepted by Walmart for dietary supplements? Trying to get a background to make sure I know exactly what I need to talk about today so that I help you get the most out of this webinar this afternoon. All right, 25% of you have responded so far. All right, now I am up over 60%, so I'll move forward. So this is what's interesting. I gave you a list of ones for Walmart. At this point in time, for regular dietary supplements, SSCI is the only one accepted by Walmart at the moment for dietary supplements. So then before we get going, I'd like to know, if your company's certified, what certifications do you guys have for your dietary supplements currently? You didn't think there was going to be tests today, but yes, there are tests in my webinars. So appreciate you guys clicking the boxes and helping me out. All right, we're at 20% response. It takes a minute for the responses to go from your computer up to the server and then back to me. Waiting for a few more people to click. Okay. So currently, the folks have WHO GMP, SSCI, or SGS Codex GMP with 211, or they have the NSF ANSI standard currently is what they're certifying to. Perfect. That helps me out. All right, so just to help answer the questions, and these links are still working. I checked them out this morning. If you're selling at Amazon, SGS is listed as an acceptable certification body, with SSCI being one of the acceptable certifications. And then SGS also has other acceptable certifications, depending if you're making a traditional pharmaceutical type product for your dietary supplement, or if you're making a traditional food type product for your dietary supplement. So the Codex GMP with the 21 CFR Part 111, that's for if you're making traditional type pharmaceutical formulations or gummies. And then at Walmart, if you are making traditional dietary supplements, they only accept the SSCI. Now, if you're making a sports nutrition supplement, they will accept the NSF certified for sport or the SSCI. So that's the first thing right out of the gate. Which certification is right for my company? Well, if you're selling at Walmart, or your branded companies that you're contract manufacturing are selling at Walmart or Sam's Club, then you definitely need to do the SSCI certification. If you're not selling at Walmart, then you have options to pick other type of certifications to be able to sell your products at Amazon. But if you have the SSCI certification for Walmart, then you are able to sell at Amazon. And it is my understanding that Costco and Kroger and Walgreens are accepting the SSCI certification as well. But CVS is not. CVS is only accepting the UL accreditation at this point in time. So, how many of you heard of 21 CFR Part 111? I know this seems like a dumb question, but you would be surprised how many people in the dietary supplement world that haven't heard of or truly don't understand 21 CFR Part 111. All right, I got 33% done. It's submitted. I'm over 50% now. So I have about 90% saying yes and about 10% saying no. And that's perfectly acceptable. We're going to go over some of the basics of 111 next. So how many of you have heard of SSCI before? All right, we got 50%. So about a third of you have heard of it and about 2/3 of you have not. Well, that's good because I'm gonna go over a little bit about 111 and then I'm gonna go over what SSCI is to help people understand the differences between what 111 says, what SSCI says, and then I'll go over the differences between the two different certifications that my team does. So 21 CFR 111 overview. It was created coming out of the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, 1994. And they were issued by the US FDA, the current version, June 25th, 2007. And there is a link to take you to 111. Basically, 111 covers the current good manufacturing practice in the manufacturing, packaging, labeling, or holding operations for dietary supplements. So when we say dietary supplement GMP, and we all know GMP stands for manufacturing, that includes the packaging, labeling, and warehouse operations. So the FDA is focused on what they're focusing on during their inspections is they want to look at, they're going to review your labels and check your label claims during the inspections. They're going to go through the requirements of what quality control is supposed to be doing. And the FDA is going to be looking for quality indicators on your products, like how many recalls you have, what quality complaint investigations, adverse events, laboratory out of specification investigations, and deviation investigations. Then from there, they're going to be digging into your facility and equipment to make sure you're meeting the requirements so that you're not impacting the safety, the strength, or the quality of your dietary supplement. They're going to do a product review, and they're going to look at your master manufacturing record. They're going to look at your batch production records, making sure that you meet all of the requirements as spelled out. Because if you go into 111 and you look under the master manufacturing record, there's a laundry list of things that you have to have in your master manufacturing record. And then when you look in 111 and you look under the batch production record, there's another laundry list of things that you need to make sure are in your batch production record. They're going to be asking you for your specifications. Yes, you do have to have approved specifications for all your raw materials, all of your packaging components, your labelings, your intermediate bulk product, and your finished products. There's nothing that doesn't say you can use the packaging component manufacturer or the label manufacturer or the raw material manufacturer specification. You can bring it into your document management system as a document of an external source, and you can approve it. But then you have to have something in your relationship with your raw material manufacturer, your packaging component manufacturer, or your labeling manufacturer, that if they change the specification, they have to make you aware of it. And again, please note that if you're creating specifications for your products and they are different than the specifications for the raw material, packaging components, or labeling, so the manufacturer of the raw material makes a specification. If you make a specification that's slightly different than that, then you want to make sure that you have agreement with your raw material people that they agree to meet the specification you want, or on the packaging component or on the labeling component. I can't tell you how many times you have a raw material specification, you test the material fails the specification, quality sends a supplier corrective action request out to the manufacturer, and they say, hey, that's not our spec. We don't have an agreement to meet that spec with you, so we're sorry about you, but this is your problem, not mine. So you want to make sure you have those relationships in place. Let's see, it would have been in 2024, the FDA identified their new office for dietary supplements, and they identified their micro expert for dietary supplements and their operations production expert for dietary supplements. And they started going out and started auditing dietary supplement facilities in addition to developing the program for the rest of the FDA inspectors, so that all the FDA inspectors will be auditing dietary supplements in the same direction. And they issued a warning letter to a couple of different companies. And the big thing that came out of this warning letter that was a requirement and has been a requirement in 21 CFR Part 111 since it came out was that in your master manufacturing record, you have to either have a representative label in the record or a cross-reference to where the label representative label can be found, so that when they're doing setups on the line and producing products, they can verify that the label on the line matches the label on the master manufacturing record that's supposed to be used. And then also on the batch production record, there's a requirement in 111 that's cleaning and maintenance needs to be captured in the batch record or a cross-reference in the batch record to where those are found, so that as part of the line clearance, the people will be able to either look right in the batch record or go right to the book or the log or wherever to make sure that they can get the line clearance done appropriately. There's a method to the madness to the FDA putting these in 111 and requiring them. And just because, so you're aware, most of you are, when you're talking about 111, they wrote this. They took parts of the food industry and they took part of the pharma industry and they sort of homogenized it together and came up with something that wasn't quite pharma and wasn't quite food. Even though we all know dietary supplements live under the food area, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic industry, or Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, and also under the FDA. But this standard's a little more than food and a little less than pharma. So also the dietary supplement expert came out and said, hey, by the way, when you're producing gummies, you need to protect those gummies when they're still sticky while they're finishing drying after they come out of the mold, because they were seeing a lot of complaints, a lot of adverse events, and a lot of problems during their inspections for the gummies having filth, i.e. there was dust, metal, wood particles sticking to the gummies. And I actually got to listen to the one FDA person speak at the Southern California Dietary Supplement Symposium, and she came out and said, don't call me and ask me what the dietary allowance is for metal or wood in gummies. And she said, oh yeah, by the way, I've received those calls. The answer is none. All right, so that's a little bit about 111. So what is SSCI? SSCI is the Supplemental Safety and Compliance Initiative. SSCI is an organization that came together with a board of directors to develop benchmarking and working groups to come up with a structure of certification and a standard that they feel is important for good dietary supplements to come out to market. So SSCI was started in response to the New York Attorney General and his investigation and his halt of sales of certain herbal supplements because the DNA test failed to detect plant material listed on the majority of the products tested. So he sent cease and desist letters out to GNC, Target, Walgreens, Walmart, and a lot of other places as well back in 2015. So in response to this, you had the GMRA group develop their standard, and you had SSCI get together and develop their standard. So SSCI pulled together industrial leadership and identified additional learnings that they needed to do. They were looking for gaps in the guidelines from the FDA in order to fill and how to fill those gaps to create a more robust standard for dietary supplements to make sure that they would never have issues with somebody like the New York State Attorney General again. So you had the New York Attorney General investigation, SSCI was formed, and then they created their standards. So SSCI, again, is Supplemental Safety Compliance and Initiative. They want to make sure that the retailers and industry are driving this versus the certification bodies driving this. So what's interesting is when SSCI got together to develop what they were going to do, they didn't let the certification bodies into the room. It was the manufacturers and the retailers got together and decided what should be what. And then they trained the certification bodies on what they wanted and how they wanted it audited. So their objective was to create a global system that reduced the risk, driving global change toward more rigid standards. They wanted to eliminate redundancy in certification and provide a unique stakeholder platform. So they were looking for a proactive solution to cut down on unnecessary audits, and they wanted it to be a risk-based assessment of how you're doing how your company is working towards safety and quality. So what are the key benefits of SSCI? If you follow the SSCI standard, it helps reduce safety risks to the consumer. It helps drive global change towards a more rigid standard. It helps manage costs by reducing the number of certifications that your company may need. They develop core competencies and capacity to be able to meet the global requirements. It provides a stakeholder platform coming from the manufacturers and from the retailers. And the goal is to be able to communicate these improvements and educate the customers. So both SSCI and GFSI, they follow the same basic type of format. So GFSI comes from the food industry, and it's a organization that helps direct how to be certified as a food manufacturer. So SSCI modeled their structure after the GFSI structure. So here again, it's a global initiative for dietary supplements, quality, and safety. Industry guidance to which certification programs can be benchmarked. It covers the entire dietary supplement supply chain. They harmonized the benchmark after years of standardization. They want to be recognized and accepted by all. And membership is allowed for retailers, manufacturers, raw material suppliers, auditing bodies, and trade associations now. Auditing bodies get to sit and listen, but auditing bodies don't get a vote. And it's driven again by the retailers and the industry. So SSCI has created working groups to help drive these different things. They have some future working groups that they're working on trying to get people to volunteer for, to develop more information for the industry. And they developed the benchmarking technical document for their GMP program for dietary supplements. So their benchmarking was approved in June of 2020, right in the middle of COVID. They did their first round of auditor training in November of 20. And then in early 2021, when people were allowed to start traveling and go back into facilities, they actually audited their first SSCI member facility. And in 2021, they audited 8 total facilities. I can't tell you how many companies are now SSCI certified, but the number is way up there because everybody that sells at Walmart was required to do it. So here are the companies from which the board of directors was made up for SSCI when they set up this organization. So you had Walmart and IBC, US Pharmalab, GNC, and a bunch of other companies. And you notice there was no certification bodies on the board of directors. So we'll go a little more detail here in a little bit about the differences between the two different certifications that SGS does. But why do companies seek these certifications? Most companies seek certifications because they want to be able to sell products at Walmart or sell products on Amazon. Their client tells them they need to get certified. They need a GMP certificate to export shipments. They will get certified to help their customers with their supplier qualification program to try and reduce the number of certification audits that are not certification audits, but the number of customer audits that they're hosting. And they get certified to help reduce their risk because they want to make sure that their quality management system and their GMPs are the best in the industry. So SGS dietary supplement certification programs. We offer the Codex GMP requirements with 21 CFR Part 111. Why does SGS do it this way? Our legal team doesn't allow SGS inside the country of origin. So let me phrase that a little differently. We cannot certify directly to an FDA standard inside the United States. Outside the United States, yes, we can certify directly to an FDA standard. Just like inside Canada, SGS can't certify to a Canadian standard. So we tie the basic GMP requirements, which is the pest control program, gowning, personal hygiene requirements, cleanliness requirements. We tie those from the Codex GMP with the 21 CFR Part 111 certification requirements in order for us to be legal be in harmonization with the SGS legal team. The SGS certification, this is a great certification. It works wonderfully for Amazon, but it is not as in-depth as the SSCI certification. Trust me when I tell you that if you're ANSI NSF certified or you're Codex GMP 21 CFR Part 111 certified through SGS, yes, you make good product. Your product's been certified for years. Your system may not be ready for the SSCI requirements. Okay? Now, SSCI certification. When SSCI set up their benchmarking standard that you have to follow to become certified, they drew requirements from 111, 117 for food, ICHQ7 for APIs, good agricultural and cultivation practices from the WHO, in addition to some of the 21 CFR 211 drug requirements. So it's very involved, much more tight and much more rigid standard than the other standards out there. So you got to remember, though, that SSCI is about your GMPs and quality management system and how you control your processes. It's not a safety standard around whether your product is safe or not from what, based upon the ingredients that you put into it. If you need that type of work, please reach out to John. He can put you in contact with the different parts of SGS that can help you do safety assessments on your products. So just to give you a little bit of background, there's a lot of animosity between the SSCI folks and the GRMA folks. GMRA is the one that follows the ANSI NSF standard. They set up an organization after the New York Attorney General. They went out, worked with the certification bodies to develop a standard that they would follow. Their standard is very much certification body centric versus the SSCI standard is designed to not be certification body centric, but to be focused on the retailers and the manufacturers. And then you get certified to what those folks agreed is important for good product. So, all right. So a little bit of humor here. I'm not sure right now if the FDA is regulating anything at the moment. They just got back to work after being out of the office for a while, and they went through all their downsizings and everything else, but that's my humor for the day. All right. What are some of the common audit findings? So when we go out and do audits for certification for dietary supplements, we find lack of cleaning records. We also find risk of cross-contamination for cleaning of tools and open doors. We find hygiene programs that are ineffective. The biggest one is around uniforms. A lot of companies will buy uniforms for their employees and then have their employees take them home, wash them, and then their employees put them on at home, hug their kids, hug their dog, get in the car, eat their breakfast on their way to work, and then show up to work with everything that was in the environment outside the plant on their uniform. So it's really no better than street clothes at that point in time. Lack of training records, especially for the contract employees. Damaged maintenance issues with damaged ceilings and lack of preventative maintenance programs. In the warehouses, we see a lack of rodent runs for pest control. And outside the facility with pest control, we see people put their bait stations right next to their entryways or their doorways. The problem with the bait stations are designed to attract the rodent so they eat it and leave and die. And if you attract them right next to your door, then when they leave the bait station, they're right next to your door to come into your building and die. So bait stations don't have to bracket doors on the outside. The industry standard is they're normally every 50 to 100 feet around the perimeter of the building. All right, and an SSCI requirement. And also, according to the new FDA expert, the FDA is expecting you to validate your dietary supplement methods now. Lack of stability programs. No trailer inspections on incoming products or outgoing products. Incoming raw materials or outgoing products. No ID testing of raw materials. And the wonderful expert at the FDA, her answer is the old standard of saying as formulated for your label instead of doing a test, and not doing ID testing on your raw materials isn't allowed anymore, because science has come a long way since the GMPs were originally written for dietary supplements, and there's more likely than not a test method to perform an ID for a raw material and a test method to calculate the assay value of the raw material. So they are cracking down on companies that are doing as formulated on the labels. Identification status labeling. A lot of folks really like to claim they're using a barcode system versus the old green, yellow, red labels. And they're printing a barcode system out of their ERP system. But there's no barcode readers in the plant or in the warehouse. And they actually will sit there and tell me with a straight face during the audit, oh yeah, our warehouse people and our production people always go back to the computer to make sure the product's released before it's picked and before it's consumed, as far as the raw materials go. Doesn't really happen. So when you have the barcode labels, if you don't have a way to read that barcode, you really don't have control of the status. All right, complaint trending. What they expect you to do, complaint trending. Environmental monitoring programs, not having those. Not doing formal change control, not having a risk-based change control process. Again, the master batch record with no label, specimen, or reference to location. Batch records, the no reference for the cleaning and maintenance records or not including them. And also when you're running your batch, the labels that come to the line, you're supposed to put collect an example of that and put it in your batch record. And then also your lot number or expiration date, if you print it and put it on the label or the bottle, then you should have an example of that as well in your batch record. Not performing line clearances, no raw material specifications, no packaging material specifications. And then on the QC responsibilities, not having quality involved in the supplier approval process, not having quality involved in the specification approval process, and not having quality involved in the document approval process. And the big one that I've been seeing a lot over the last 6 months is packaging material approval. Yes, quality is releasing the raw materials. Quality is normally releasing the labels. But packaging components are being received directly into stock. So quality is not doing the release that's required according to 21 CFR Part 111. All right, so how do we best prepare for an audit? If you want to get certified. If you want to get certified to SSCI, reach out to SGS and ask us for a copy of the benchmarking standard to start the process. If you want to get certified to our Codex GMP with 21 CFR Part 111 requirements, contact SGS. We can give you the details of what those requirements are to meet that standard. But again, we would love for you to reach out to SGS to start the certification process. So, what is the process? So you reach out to SGS, you complete a questionnaire for the sales guy. We put a proposal together. Once the proposal is signed, we schedule the audit. Normally 2 to 4 weeks before the audit, you get an audit schedule sent out to you. We conduct the audit. If there's nonconformities, we have to process through those. If you're on the SSCI program, the SSCI program currently is a yearly certification. So every year you have to be recertified. So if you have any findings at all, they have to be closed completely, whether it's a minor or major or critical, before the certificate gets issued each year. If you're on the other program for SGS, majors have to be closed before you get your certificate issued. Minors, we have to have evidence of the correction and prove your corrective action plan and root cause. And then in the surveillance audit, we follow up to make sure that they're effective. All right, don't answer this question yet. We'll come back to this question. So, where's my Q&A? Oh, my Q&A slide disappeared. So, we're going to go back. We'll go back and sit on this. But okay, so for Q&A, let me pull up the Q&A. Let's see what we got so far. All right, so I have a list of questions here. Can you advise us from the perspective of a virtual manufacturer that wants to use a private label from a GMP facility for a dietary supplement for diabetes, hypoglycemia? We want to sell mostly at Amazon. If you want to sell mostly at Amazon, then you need to pick a contract manufacturer who has at least an SGS Codex GMP with 21 CFR 111 certification or an SSCI certification, because Amazon's going to ask you for that certificate from your contract manufacturer in order to put it up on the thing. In addition, with Amazon, you're going to have your contract manufacturer, or you as the branded company, is going to have to send samples out to an approved, Amazon approved laboratory for testing, and then Amazon will receive the test results directly from that laboratory for you to sell on Amazon. Hopefully that answers your question. All right. How does SSCI compare to the ANSI 4452? All right, to go in a little more detail, ANSI 4452 focuses strictly on 111 requirements, 21 CFR 111. The SSCI standard includes some of the requirements from pharma, like method validation and raw material ID testing. And then they require things out of food, like FSVP, allergen control, and food defense as well. SSCI requires a more risk-based approach than NSF ANSI. All right, number 4, next question. So SSCI is for the manufacturer, but what benefit is this certificate to the consumer? Okay, so yes, SSCI gets certified. And how that benefits the consumer is it's a more stringent standard than the other ones out there. And being more stringent, it requires more things about that have to be done. Like if you're buying materials from overseas, how are you maintaining your foreign supplier verification program? If you're using allergens, how are your allergens being managed? I want you to have a food defense plan. They love it when you do HACCP, even though 111 doesn't require HACCP. They want a full stability program. They want method validations. So they want things that are beyond 111, which in turn means that this product follows a much stricter quality management system and GMP requirements than the other standards. So you should be getting a safer product for the consumer. For rodent runs, what is the required distance? The required distance is big enough for a rodent to run. There's actually no specific requirement listed in the GMPs anywhere about how big a rodent run is. The only place it's actually discussed is in the auditor's training manual at the FDA, the inspector's training manual. It says in the food part that you should investigate the rodent runways for evidence of rodents. So if you go back to the 1970s when the first GMPs came out, there was an FDA inspector that was at a conference and somebody asked him how big a rodent run should be. He went, 12 to 18 inches so I can get my fat head back there. And by default, that became the standard. But the requirement is big enough for a rodent to get through. Hey, John, can you put yourself on mute, please? All right. Does ID testing need to be done on each lot of raw material? Yes. What types of tests are recommended by the FDA? The FDA doesn't actually recommend the ID test. They tell you if there's a compendia, follow the compendia requirements, or use scientific judgment for ID testing. A lot of the companies out there for best practices are using NIR, FTIR, X-ray diffraction type techniques for ID. Hopefully that helps. All right, so that's the ones I have in the Q&A box here. Let me pull up over here and see if there's any questions that came in through into my chat. Let's see here. Looking to see if any other IDs. Does anybody else, somebody else sent a question in. Good, I will answer that question real quick. All right. Should heavy metals testing and micro testing be completed? If there's a risk of heavy metals in your raw material or in your finished product from your raw materials, then yes, you should do heavy metals testing. If there's a risk of micro, then yes, you should do micro testing. If there's a risk of pesticides, you should do pesticide testing. It's all based upon risk to your product and risk to your consumer.
So, John, I got a question today from a client. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead, John.
Great. So the client was a contract manufacturer, and her question was whether or not she was responsible for the stability testing or whether it was the brand owner who was. And so anyway, I thought you could answer that.
Okay. So when it comes to stability testing, when you're a contract manufacturing company, if you're putting a shelf life on a label, there has to be stability data to support that shelf life decision. And whether that stability data is generated by the brand owner or by the CMO is dependent on the relationship and the contractual agreements between the two organizations. The FDA does expect the brand owner to have a quality agreement in place with the contract manufacturer. Inside that quality agreement, there should be some type of reference as to who's responsible for initial stability and ongoing stability for your products. So I got another question in the box. Is this webinar recorded and will the slides be shared? I have to kick over to Mona, who's our producer from our marketing team. Yes, I know the webinar is recorded and you'll be able to go out and You'll be able to link in if you register for it. You can watch the recording, but I don't know if the slides will be sent out individually or not. The answer is yes to both. So yes, the slides will go out to those people that are in attendance, and you also be able to see the recorded webinar later. And if
Thanks,
anybody,
John.
and if anybody wants to, if anybody wants to see, if you have anybody else that wants to see this, all they have to do is sign up for it, sign up for this webinar, and they can see the recording as well for free.
So I've got another
right,
question, John.
Yes.
Occasionally people come that are just distributors. So they might get 5 products from someone else, a manufacturer, and they're being asked to get the certification as a requirement to do business with Amazon or other people. And so can a distributor be certified to SSCI and 21 CFR 111?
Yes. A distributor can a distributor can be certified to either one of these standards that we offer, and we only audit against those clauses that are applicable to a distributor. So if you're a distributor and you don't do packaging and labeling, then we don't audit packaging and labeling. Okay, so we audit against what's required for a distributor. All right, any other questions, John? And I do apologize. John's been having some technical difficulties, and he's been in and out of the meeting a few times because the system's been freezing up and we've been losing contact with him. So he's frozen again and he has to restart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the thank you slide for him while he's coming back around. So there you go at the end. There's my email address. There's John's email address. There's some different websites you can do to get a hold of SGS through social or on our website. And we also have some training information that we're going to get to in a minute. So if you would go ahead, if you're interested, if you want to be contacted, this is just a survey to find out if we've intrigued you or not. If you click yes on this, that doesn't mean we contact you because this survey is anonymous. So if you go ahead and click the boxes, that'd be great. And then I'll get you over to the last slide. So go ahead and click on we got 6% done. All right, I'm about 25%, but I got to get wrapped up because we're at 58 minutes. So 67% of the people would like to be contacted. 33% said no. Thank you for sharing that information with us. And one last thing. We have lots of training opportunities. And normally John, the sales guy, would be the one to tell you all this stuff. Since he's having trouble, I'll do it. We have a QR code. Scan it to subscribe to receive emails from SGS about different things we do on YouTube. We also have public training where you can come together with other people from the industry and go through training, or we do private training as well. So if you need anything, please reach out to John or I, and we'd be happy. In the meantime, if there's no other questions, I want to thank everybody for joining us today and hanging in there with me for an hour. We appreciate it. We thank you. Those that are SGS customers, we thank you for your business. Those that are not SGS customers, we're going to do our best to make you an SGS customer. So we look forward to the potential to work with you in the future. Thank you very much and have a great afternoon and a great weekend.